Donald Trump has started laying the groundwork to dispute the results of today's election if he loses. There are also some serious concerns about violence across the United States, regardless of the outcome, and of course, what all of this means for Canada. David Frum is the staff writer at The Atlantic and former speechwriter for the George W. Bush administration, and he is our guest here this morning in Washington. Great to see you again and in person.
Good morning.
Good to have you here. Listen, in a recent interview, you said the best indicator of whether a race is close or not is the behavior of the candidates. Based on the behavior you've seen in this week, in particular last night, where would you say this race is at?
Donald Trump's campaign has been undisciplined. He's also done 4 appearances in North Carolina, a state that if he were winning, he would already have in the bag. If you're a Republican and you're worried about North Carolina, that's not good. If you're a Republican and you're not able to tell the comedians who campaign for you, don't insult large voting blocks, that's not good. The Harris campaign has been very focused on their message. There's been a lot of discipline. There have been no leaks about how mad they are at the candidate, unlike the Trump campaign. So one campaign feels bad, one feels good.
What about last night and the tone from last night? There was a real shift.
Yeah. Look, Donald Trump, if he loses this election, he faces criminal jeopardy. He faces $500 million in civil litigation. He's got 1,000 people who committed crimes for him in 2021. They will all stay in prison instead of being pardoned. The stakes could not be higher. If Harris loses, she'll be vice president for another few months, and then she'll go on to get ready to run again in 2028. So one candidate is facing the most dangerous consequences if he loses. The other candidate, people can say, you ran a good race, you did well, you get a chance again.
When it comes to Canada, you told the Business Council in British Columbia that we'll face challenges with the new U.S. government, regardless of who wins, particularly when we're talking about trade. Trump, we know, is calling for this minimum 10% tariffs on international goods and imports. Who would Canada have a more mutually beneficial relationship with? Which administration? Well,
with the Harris administration, the disputes will be managed in an adult and grown-up way. There will not be yelling, there will not be screaming. But there's no mistake, America has moved in a more protectionist direction over the past 10 years. That was true under Biden as well as under Trump. Biden you could talk to, Trump you can't. But Canada has to accept, especially with the reauthorization of the U.S., Canada, Mexico Free Trade Agreement coming up in the next administration, keeping commerce flowing in North America is becoming more difficult.
So then what about the CUSMA or whichever letters that you want to put in, whatever order the country that you're in? How does opening that up work depending on which administration's in power? 2026, right, is the rework?
Yes, it's an option. It doesn't have to, it can be left alone. Nothing automatically happens to that agreement, but there is an option for the countries to reopen. Mexico is also going in some very bad protectionist, statist, anti-foreign trade ways. So I think you'll have pressure from both the United States and Mexico to say, let's try to create more of a fortress North America. We're walled off from the rest of the world. And Canada will say, we want to see commerce flowing in North America for sure. We also want to trade in freedom with the rest of the world for sure. And that's good for everybody, not just for Canada. But Canada is going to have to be a little bit of the champion of the merits of the free trade vision once championed by President Reagan and President Bush.
Canada's former ambassador to the U.S., David McNaughton, said in an interview this week that he believed that the likelihood of political violence in this election is fairly high. What do you expect the transition of power to look like?
I am not as worried about violence as some, because I think we need to remember, in 2021, the violence was not spontaneous. It was not people taking to the streets with rifles. The president, the serving president, incited a mob to come attack Congress on his behalf. It was top down, not bottom up. It was not spontaneous. It was organized. This time around, the Capitol will be defended. Remember, Trump pulled the forces away to protect the Capitol. The Capitol will be defended properly, and the serving president will enforce the law. And if Trump is the loser and demands violence, he will demand it as a rebel, an insurrectionist, and a traitor, not as the serving president, whom some people are deluded to listen to.
I want to talk to you about Republican voters. In your most recent article for The Atlantic, you addressed them and you said, if you placed your faith and loyalty in Reagan and Bush's party of freedom, you need to accept that the party of Trump and Vance has rejected your ideas. This GOP is something new and different and ugly, and you owe it nothing. Now, you say that Donald Trump is not reflective of the Republican Party, but the Republican Party has put him on the ticket in the last 3 elections.
Yeah. Well, the more shame then. I say this just as a personal reflection. So I became active in U.S. politics literally in the year 1980. I knocked on doors for the Reagan-Bush ticket. I remember the faith that pulled me, and it was freedom, it was the defense of democracy, it was trade, it was markets, it was a belief and reverence for the Constitution of the United States and the peaceful progress of that Constitution. Every one of those things is out the window. So the things that inspired me then inspire me now.
I want to close off by asking about this very special post that you put up in relation to your daughter Miranda, and it has to do with how you placed your vote in this last election. And if we can put up that board, I want to read to everybody what it is that you said into your post, because it was very moving, and you talked about voting with your heart, and it was for her. You said, we're living, you said that you had placed your vote for her and in your heart. Can you tell me more about that decision?
Well, my daughter Miranda, we lost her in February. The consequences of a brain tumor that she had suffered some years before. She was not a super political person, but she was a woman who lived in freedom and independence.
There she is there.
And the rights of young women like her and the dignity are in question in this election. So when I put my ballot in the mailbox, this is your voice.
Thank you for sharing that story again here with us. I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
David Frum, it has been great to have you here. A real privilege and an honor. Thank you so much. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I just thought I could get through that better than I did.
You did well. Should be really proud. Thank you so much. If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.